Hey everyone, so this is a very long overdue update, and I do apologize. Pretty much every time that I went to film this update, something else ended up happening with the car, and that does sort of set the tone for this video. Keep in mind that the last update was 8 months ago and 12,000 miles ago, so there has been a bit of time in between updates, but it hasn't been a perfect few months for this car. So I will start off with going back to August. I did discover that the parking brake in this car is no longer functional. So I went to mess with this mirror, which I probably pointed out in another video. It's tinted a little bit yellow now, and I think there's a bit of a crack down there, and when the mirrors tilt down when I put the car into reverse, it ends up getting stuck, especially in the summer when it's hot and the plastic expands. And I was messing with that, and the car was off, so I wanted to put the parking brake on just so the car wouldn't end up rolling away or anything, and that is when I took my foot off the brake and discovered that it was no longer functional. So that may not be a new thing, that might have been broken years ago, and I never noticed it until I had to turn the car off and mess with that. So I can't necessarily fault that in this last 8 months. And then moving forward, I will check my notes just to make sure I cover everything. Next, moving forward to October, the neutral safety switch ended up failing. And that failed in a somewhat odd way, since the car was saying that when I put it in neutral, it was in second gear, or maybe third gear, at the same time. So clearly that's not possible, so that was very interesting. The more concerning thing was the car shifted really hard into drive, so I thought that was something wrong with the transmission itself. So that was concerning. Thankfully, it was only the neutral safety switch, so we got that replaced at the Toyota dealer in Milwaukee for around $350, if I'm remembering correctly. So that thankfully was cheaper than any transmission repair. Next up, in December, I've actually been getting the P0420 code, which is catalyst below efficiency threshold, and that is some form of code for the catalytic converter, which I was a little bit unhappy about, since we did replace the catalytic converter I think about 2 years ago, and I found out that this car actually has 3 catalytic converters, which is relatively common for cars with a V engine, since there's 2 banks of cylinders and there are 2 catalytic converters for those. So there's also one beyond those 2. So that is maybe something to look out for other cars. It is intermittent, and it seems to happen every 2,000 or 3,000 miles, since it came back once before and then cleared itself. So we're kind of waiting on that. Hopefully it stays intermittent and it doesn't come back too often. And then finally we ended up replacing the valve cover gasket, so I will pop the hood for that. That we got done at our independent mechanic for $475. It was a little bit cheaper than the Toyota or Lexus dealer. And unfortunately, this did end up catching up with us. You'll be able to see, hopefully, that it is now nice and clean on the front of the engine. So that was seeping for quite a while. That was honestly going on for about 4 years. So then it finally started dripping. So it was finally time to replace it. So thankfully that's all taken care of. I think for now, theoretically, the only other things that need to be addressed eventually are, there is a seal in the rear diff that's seeping, and supposedly the power steering is seeping. So for both of those, I will just end up waiting until they start leaking more, since they're a bit pricier repairs. And then finally, I got new wipers on the car, so I will hop in to talk about the rest of this. Mainly because I heard someone getting in the car and I got self-conscious. So I do apologize for the change of scenery. So I got new wipers on this car, and then I also fixed the squeaky door, so you'll be able to hear it is no longer squeaky. So I ended up throwing some white lithium grease in there, and that ended up fixing it. I put WD-40 in there first, and then I think that is water-based, so definitely correct me if I'm wrong, because that is very possible. And that ends up pushing out more of the grease, so it doesn't last, or white lithium grease ends up holding up a lot better. And I think that looks like that's about the end of updates. So I will say that it sounds like there's a lot that went wrong with this car, and it definitely did not have a perfect month. Or 8 months, I should say. I did remember too. So I noticed that the dashboard is cracking up along the edges of the gauges here, and there's a shadow now, so you might be able to barely make out that crack got a little bit bigger, and then it also ended up cracking up along this ridge. So the dashboard's definitely cracking more, which is unfortunate. And I think that car left, so I have regained the confidence to just do one more walk around of the car. The rust has not gotten better, and if you do see any kind of white streaks like this, that's just wax that I never fully cleared off the car. I kind of quickly waxed in October and then didn't do the best job clearing it off. So here's kind of the side view. I'll show you guys the rust a little bit here. So again, not the worst. It's more appearance than anything. Hasn't gotten better, that's for sure, but it wouldn't as rust. I do still think that this car has held up very well for being parked outside always. And I apologize, this lighting's kind of tricky. I was hoping to get up to the roof of the parking garage, but it's still blocked off. I did throw some more wax on these headlights, since you'll probably be able to make out on this one a little bit better. It's starting to get yellow again. I'll probably have to touch that up this summer. So hopping back in, I will start it up. And again, it sounds like a lot happened, and it definitely wasn't a perfect amount of time, but I'm still very happy with this car. So you guys can hear it. Starts up happily. This car's been a very handy tool for me to have. I'll buckle my seatbelt so you guys don't have to look at the flashing light. It's got me through snow. There was one snowstorm where I watched a lot of people struggle to get out of my parking lot in my apartment before I got down there, and then I just drove straight out of the parking lot. I also saw cars stuck street parked, and I parked in the spot that a Corolla was stuck in, and then I just drove straight in and straight out with no issues. So I really have appreciated having this car around. Additionally, I've carried a lot of my friends in it, and I've carried 8-foot lumber in it now and welding gas, which I like to think that this is the first Lexus RX that has carried welding gas, which if you are someone else who's carried welding gas in this car, definitely let me know, because I would like to know whether this is true or not. Again, seemed like a little bit of an eventful update, but I'm very happy with this car still, and it's been a great tool for me. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching.